We suffer more in our imagination than in the reality. Seneca said this. And if you really think about it, you will notice that majority of the suffering in your life exists only in your mind. If you look at this pie chart, what you will notice is the majority of the suffering in your life is in your head. It is in your imagination. It's in the scenario that you create, the possibility you imagine, most of which never actually happens. It's all mental, all in your head. The actual suffering that you face in the reality is just a small fraction compared to the storm you brew in your mind. And here's the interesting thing, as Alan Watts said, you can handle anything that you face. Think about it. Every real problem, every challenge, every source of stress or anxiety that has come into your life, you have managed to handle it, haven't you? The issue isn't the reality of your problems, it's the way we let our imagination magnify them. Now, this brings me to something that I have realized, which is that we cannot stop the thoughts. I have tried all sort of techniques, meditation, watching my breath, observing my thoughts as they arise and disappear, trying to let go of my thoughts, trying to let them dissolve, but honestly, it never worked for me. No matter how much effort I put in, I couldn't stop the thoughts, because the truth is, stopping your thought is like trying to stop the earth from revolving around the sun. It's the nature of the earth to revolve. It's like trying to stop the sun from shining or wind from blowing. These things are part of their nature, just as it's the nature of the mind to think. So the problem isn't the thought themselves. It's not about having a negative or bad thought. The real issue lies in how we interact with those thoughts and how those thoughts makes us feel. Just take a moment and think about it. Why does a negative thought bothers you? It's because it triggers certain emotion within you. It make you feel a certain way which you don't like to feel. That's where the problem lies. For example, if I told you that you are a whiteboard, you would probably laugh it off because it means nothing to you. But if I said you are a stupid person, now you can't brush it off because it triggers certain emotion in you. Why? Because it's aimed at your ego. And I will come back to explain what ego is and how to really dissolve this ego in a minute. But what I really want you to understand is that any thought that evokes certain bodily reaction and feeling and emotions within you, that is the cause of your problem. So think of your thought as the masculine energy and your emotion as the feminine energy. Whenever the masculine and feminine energy comes together, creation happens. In the very same way, when a thought successfully evoke a strong emotion within you, it brings that thought to the life. The thought gains its own existence. It's no longer just a fleeting idea anymore. It has power over you. Now it can pull you and control you just like a puppet on a string. Now let's talk about the ego. What is it? Ego is anything that comes after I am. For example, I am rich, I am successful, I am smart, I am kind. These are all the identities and concepts that you have picked during your life that has now become the extension of who you are. And if you have a thought that challenge those identities, it start to bother you because it triggers an emotional reaction. If you have a thought that you are going to lose your money or your loved ones, you can't stay still with that thought. Now you start resisting it. Now you try to distract yourself by picking up your phone or looking at the social media because this thought doesn't sit well with your ego. Money and your relationship are the extension of who you are, and the thought of losing them is just like losing a part of you. But just imagine for an instant that you are 100% okay with the thought of losing the money and losing your loved ones. Do you think this thought can any longer bother you? The problem is that we are so much attached with the ego that even the thought of losing anything which has become the extension of our ego doesn't sit well with us, and it makes us feel fearful, anxious and insecure. And I'm not saying that you are going to lose your loved ones or you are going to lose your money, but the problem is that you are not even okay with the thought of losing them. So the real work isn't about stopping the thought. That's impossible. The real work is about dissolving this ego by stop identifying with the extension of the identity that we have created. The moment you are okay with that, a thought cannot bother you anymore because it can't get its life force to survive from you anymore, which is nothing but the emotion. So let's see this concept in action. Let's say I have a thought that I am bad at making videos. The moment this thought arises, it evokes emotions like fear, anxiety, or insecurity within me. Because now this thought combined with the emotion isn't just an idea, it has now taken a life of its own. If I let this thought trigger emotions, now it has power over me. It can control me, shift my direction, and now I can't stay still with this thought. At this moment, I am in trouble because when you interact with your thought, you are controlled by it. So the moment I think I am bad at making videos and it stirs insecurity, fear, and anxiety within me, I can't stay still with it anymore. I need to act. And the first reaction is usually resistance, where I try to tell myself, no, 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 I am good at making videos. Oh, it's not true. Look at all the likes on my channel. I think I'm good at making videos. And if you really look closely, it's not the thought that I'm trying to get rid of, it's the feeling that this thoughts has triggered in me. That feeling doesn't sit well with my ego, which thinks that I am good at making videos. Now the problem with resistance is that anything that you resist persists. It's like me telling you not to think about pink elephant. All you can do is think about the pink elephant. The more I tell myself not to think about me being a bad video creator, the more I think about it. But then not only do I have a negative thought about me being a bad video creator, but I also start thinking negatively about this negative thought, creating a feedback loop of negativity. Before I know it, I am submerged and drowned in my mind because of a single thought that I am not good at making videos. The problem isn't thought itself, the problem is that it successfully evokes emotions in me. The mistake people make is trying to resist it. When you resist, you give the thought more power because you are adding more emotions to it and magnifying its intensity. Emotion is the charge and life force behind a thought. So if we want to control our mind and not be affected by this negative thought, we need to stop them from triggering emotions. The moment a thought arises, if it doesn't get an emotional response, it will rise and fade away into nothingness. If I don't let this thought steer emotions in me, it will dissolve on its own. So how can we really do this? To dissolve the thought and stop it from triggering emotions, we need to dissolve the ego. We need to stop identifying with the ego. The thought that I am not good at making videos goes against the ego. It goes against the attachment that I have created that identifies me as a good video creator. As long as this thought opposes my ego, I can't stop it from controlling me. The solution is simple. If I am okay with being a bad video creator, I stop resisting the thought. If I'm okay with the thought of me being a bad video creator, this thought no longer direct toward my ego and get any emotional response from me. And I'm not saying that I am accepting me being a bad video creator. All I am saying is I'm okay with the thought of me being a bad video creator. There is a very subtle difference between the two. And once that happens, the thought dissolves and no more bother me because it's not getting any emotional response from me. So let me give an example of that. A friend of mine, he had a sort of argument with his boss because his boss wanted him to do overtime, and he took a stand for himself and said he's not going to do it because he had some family obligation. Now while on his way back to the home, he called me and told me what happened, and he even said that he's very happy that he took stand for himself, but now he was having all the different negative thoughts about what can potentially go wrong. He told me that he's now worried that his boss might give him bad ratings or not like him anymore. He even feared losing his job. And what I really told him is that be okay with losing your job. And his immediate response was like, please don't say that. He resisted at first, saying that he had loans and family responsibility. So the issue was that he wasn't okay with even the thought of losing his job. The job had become a part of his ego, and if that job was taken away from him, it felt like losing a part of himself. So I reassured him, saying that, you know what, you are educated, you have savings and investment, you will figure something out. And as we talked, he began to realize that he had actually a lot of savings and investment and even skills to find another job, and he could survive even if the worst happened. And this thought no longer had control and pull over him. Next day he had a conversation with his boss, and his boss apologized and everything went to the normal. But the suffering he experienced was because he wasn't ready to accept the possibility of even losing the job. The moment a negative thought enters your mind and you start to accept that possibility, it loses its power over you. When you are okay with it, that thought no longer controls you. I understand it's not always easy, but when you accept that negative scenario and become okay with it, you dissolve the ego. You stop identifying with the thing that defines you, your house, your money, your business. Once you detach from these, they no longer controls you. If we can stop reacting to these emotions, the thought loses its power. The key is to stop identifying with the ego and to understand your true nature. You are not your house, you are not your money or your relationship. You are the consciousness experiencing life through this vehicle called the body. Once you realize this, your thought can no longer bother you. You don't need to stop the thought itself, just stop reacting to it. So how do we do this? By being okay with the worst case scenario, as uncomfortable as it may feel. Now whenever a negative thought arises and you are trying to be okay with that, you are going to feel certain emotions. For example, if a thought arises that you are going to lose your business, the emotion of fear, insecurity and anxiety might surface. At that moment, how do you become okay with those feelings? How do you accept the idea of losing your business or money? And to be very clear, I'm not saying that you are actually going to lose your money or fail in your business. All I am saying is to be okay with the thought of it happening. So when a negative thought arises, you feel fear and anxiety. And what I want you to do is to imagine the worst case scenario, losing your money, losing your business, and let that emotion of fear, anxiety, and insecurity arises. Don't resist them. This is where the problem lies. The thought evokes a certain emotion and we resist that emotion. The more we resist, the more it magnifies. And why does that happen? Think of it this way. Imagine a wall and a ball. The ball represent your emotion, and when you throw the ball at the wall, it bounces back. The act of throwing it is the resistance to the emotion. The ball comes back and you resist it again by throwing it even harder. This back and forth trap the energy of the ball, and similarly your emotions. Now imagine stop throwing the ball back at the wall. When you let it fall, it initially lands with a lot of force but then rolls a little before coming to a stop. This is how emotions work. When they arise, stop resisting them. When you resist your emotion, their energy get trapped. Stop trying to push them away. Let them run their course. When the emotion arises, let it take over. Tell the emotion, you have right to exist. I am allowing you to fully take me over. Often these negative emotions are contracting sensation that you feel in the areas like solar plexus or the neck. So sit down, let the emotion arise and say, I am allowing you to completely take me over. And what you will notice is that as the emotion rises, when you give it permission to exist, it runs its course. The trapped energy is freed and eventually it start to dissipate. The key here is to stop judging the emotion. Don't label it as fear, anxiety, or insecurity. Simply recognize it as a sensation, a heaviness in your solar plexus area or neck. Let it arise without judgment or without any label. Just sit with it for 5 minutes. Don't do anything. Let it fully take you over. And what you will notice that it loses its intensity. When you stop resisting, the trapped energy dissipates. It's no longer bouncing back like the ball and the wall. Instead, it runs its course and fades away. This is how you stop the cycle of resistance. The main takeaway is this: the thought itself is not the problem is the emotion the thought evokes. And this happens because the thought is directed at your ego. The ego resists because it cannot handle the disintegration of the identity that it has built. The I am rich, I am having money, I am successful, this identity. And these emotions take control because we refuse to let go of these concepts. The moment you start being okay with the thought, the emotion it evokes loses its power. Imagine the worst case scenario and be okay with it. Eventually the thought will stop triggering the emotion. Like, think about it. There are over 6 billion people on this planet. You are just one of them. From the perspective of the universe, you are one among 6 billion. Yet because we see our life from the first person perspective, we feel special, as if nothing bad should happen to us. But from the universe's perspective, it doesn't matter. Even the king and the richest dies, and nobody cares. Everything is moving toward the entropy. Everything rises and falls. It is created and destroyed. All the identities that you have created for yourself, your money, your business, your success, your relationship, will eventually fade away. This is the law of entropy. Whether it happens now or 50 years later, it doesn't matter. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't strive for success or wealth. What I am saying is to stop identifying with these things and detach your sense of self from them.